Good morning, folks. Hope you're all okay from my front room today. That's not better. Good morning, hope you're well. Plenty to go through today. I'm on quarantine at the minute until this evening. Going to be in contact with my neighbour who 87. She got coronavirus. So we saw her 2 weeks ago for fish and chips and sort of housebound now. Until today. Loads to get through today. We've got tons of stuff to do. Bit limited in terms of swinging a club here without taking a divot out of my carpet. I don't see that. I've done that a few times here. That's why I bought myself a short club. I got myself a short and ladies wedge here today to demonstrate. Plenty of rehearsal swings. Good morning, everybody. Just type in any questions along the way. I've got tons to go through today. Some really good stuff to go through. Alrighty, so it's 3 minutes past. And today we're talking a little bit about impact and follow through. I'm a bit limited in what I can do in here in terms of space, so we may well do that for another time. But I've certainly got some bits and bobs I want to talk to you about. So, impact and follow through. So the game is entirely about impact. Everything we do is about generating that position. And so what is impact? So I found a great set of pictures last night. And if anything sums it up better than that, I haven't seen it. And there is Adam Scott. Absolutely bombing it. Now, the first thing you know I'm going to talk about is how straight the glove arm and the shaft of the club are. So all his levers have unwound there. I think a big interesting part there is just how far his head is behind the ball. Seemingly miles behind the ball. And this is where we talk so often between ourselves about the difference between a position and motion. We know he's hitting the ball that way, but his head at that moment, his body weight looks like it's behind the ball here. So from this angle here, just tilt the screen slightly. From this angle here, as he comes in, we know he's in this position here. All his levers have unwound here. He's not in a position where everything's stuck or out of position. They unlever down to here, and he looks like he's heavily behind the ball. But of course, he's hitting the driver. He wants to get an ascending blow on the driver. And so what does he do there? In the motion of the swing, not just the position, we see his impact position, left arm shaft of the club there, head quite a long way behind the ball, and that's why we start with our weight behind the ball. He then moves into the next position, still at quite a curve, but look at the motion now. He's really thrown those arms out towards the target. This is what I want to talk about later on, because somebody sent me an email saying, could you talk about why the pros exit left? And that comes under one of the myths of the golf swing. There's no such thing as an exit left. The club swings around the body. We then get into Scott's big follow-through position there. So in the time frame of 0.0 something of a second, he's gone from looking like he's way behind the ball here into a position where he's all of a sudden there. So he was only leaning behind it for a very brief moment of time. So what is impact, really? We're trying to lose any of the obliques in a swing. So with a driver, because we have a face down, I've got a rescue wood here, not a driver. So the driver, let's say for argument's sake, pretend this was a driver here. It's got, let's say, 10 degrees of loft on it. So if we lean back, that helps get more elevation on the ball. So you say, well, why don't you just put a 15-degree loft on the club face? Why on earth would you lean back to corrupt the club? Because we know if we put 15 degrees of loft on the club face, that creates too much spin on the ball. And so the spin then gets multiplied and the ball banks. So the faster we swing, the more power we generate in the swing, that ball will start to rise up like this rather than going forwards. So DeChambeau, very famously, got himself down to a 5 or a 6-degree lofted driver. Nothing on that at all. And if we take 6 degrees of loft, that needs an awful lot of quality strike and a hell of a lot of swing speed just to elevate, because the launch angle comes out at 6, 7, 8, or 9 degrees, that sort of thing. Which is not enough really to get the ball airborne for most amateur golfers at all. For the tour professionals, even they wouldn't have a 6, 7-degree lofted driver. But what Bryson did was he de-lofted the club heavily, got himself way back on it here to ascend. So he had much more of an ascending build into the pros, and that gave him the benefit of less backspin, but high launch. It's easy to do one or the other. It's easy to launch a ball very high or put lots of spin on the ball. What it's not easy to do is to optimize the height of the flight and keep the spin rate down. So, if we then just look at one of my favorite old books here, and this is How to Play Your Best Golf All the Time by Tommy Armour, who was a leading player and leading coach of his day. Incredible man, actually. There he is, very handsome man, good-looking man, made a fortune out of golf back in the 20s. And Tommy Armour, this is a great story. Born and raised in Edinburgh, went to university there. He left school to fight in the First World War. He joined the Royal Scots as a machine gunner, and then an officer, and then a branch of the Tank Corps. While serving with the tanks, so he must have been a teenager at the time, he was caught in a mustard gas attack and lost his eyesight, which he later regained, but only in his right eye. His tank was blown up, and he got out of his tank and killed the machine gunner who blew his tank up with his bare hands. Now, this was not a man to be messed around with. Anyway, in his book here, he talks about all the elements of the golf swing, how you stand, how you position yourself, how you swing, how you make your backswing and what have you. And there's no pictures at all of the follow through. And in it, what he says is, look, if you held the club properly, if you've balanced your body as I asked you to, if you positioned your feet, which I'm going to come to in a second, as I've asked you to, and you make this leg motion on the way back, swing the club up to here, and then do what I told you to on the way down, you'll arrive at impact. Once you arrive at impact, I don't need to teach you about the follow through. Now, I'm not going to argue with Tommy Armour for lots of reasons. The book is a worldwide bestseller, but it tells you what the sequence of a swing is. And I use that word so often about the sequence of a swing. And I'm not doing my job properly if I don't really focus on where your hand position is. So if I get your hand position correct, if I then get you to move your body correct on the way back and get you up to here, swing the club down, get the body moving correct on the way through, then I can say, we'll just make a follow through or get through it a bit more. And I'm very, very general on that part of the swing. The reason being, I know that so much prior to that has created whatever follow through you've got. So if you do topple backwards in a swing back here, it's likely there's an error somewhere earlier in the sequence. Now, in terms of great positions, I took some videos of the Fuller girls, our champion golfers. And that's Annabelle at impact. And this is Sammy just after impact. Oh, I've got them right way around there. Yeah, that's Sammy just after impact. And Annabelle through impact. I've tried to catch them more or less at the same position there. What does that tell you about the follow through? If you've shown those pictures to a complete beginner, they'd have absolute clarity of where those two players are swinging the club, what's the direction of contact, where they're trying to get the ball to go. So when they're swinging there, we see them up and down, obviously, in the swing, and then this big position, if I'm taking the follow-through position of here, or the part way through is a follow-through, is simply an extension of how they would have started. Arms out in front of them, left arm shaft of the club forms a straight line. For you, Ian, as a lefty, right arm shaft of the club forms a straight line. If they come through and swing to there, their arms are nice and straight. I go on about it all the time, the chicken wing. The chicken wing is born much earlier in the swing. We have to create some bend in the elbows. There's already a bit of bend out there in my right elbow. On the way back, we can sometimes get a bit of a flying right elbow. Not the worst thing in the world, quite frankly. You've got some levers at work there, and also the club gets a little higher in the swing. But on the way through, after impact, we don't particularly want much of a bend out here. Some good players do it. Brooks Koepka does it. But his arms are the same size as my legs, so he can do whatever he likes, really. Okay. We then get into a bit more about the follow-through. That is how the follow through was taught back in the 70s. You've seen me use this picture before. Get it right. 1 second. Get that right. There we go. A real back cruncher, that one. I was talking to the soldiers last night. I showed it them, I think. Oops. Look at the bend in that spine there. Now, with the limited technology that they had compared to what we have today, the reason why the pros did that is that they leant back on the way through to try and get the ball airborne. So all the pros would have this huge, what we call a reverse C, a curving action in the back here. There's absolutely no need for that. Now, it's bad for the back anyway, but what the pros did back then was they tried to take loft off the club face, lean back, and then try and hit it on the way up. And that gave them that reverse C curve here. So again, they knew what they had to try and do with ball spin and loft and launch angle. They didn't have the data to provide it. Now, back in the day, the kit that they used was far less reliable, but it was easier to shape and change. Because I used to do it myself when I was a first-term pro. I worked for Master Club Fitter, and we get the pros wooden-headed clubs, and we'd shave them or file them down to create less loft, more loft, a little bit more of an open face if you wanted to play more of a fade or open face to the ball, and close the face as well. We then also shave off parts of the sole, and that way then the club would sit differently for them. So if we shave off the back quarter here, it would lean the club back a little bit, add a bit of loft, and open the face a little bit. Alrighty, so in terms of what you're looking for with your follow through, everything I do every time I give a video lesson is to look at the picture or impact, and if I see something which resembles the lead arm and the shaft of the club in a straight line, I know we're in great position there. For you in back here, that position there. And the address position, I just have to tilt the camera down a bit, is not dissimilar to the impact position anyway. If I were to set up here to address, my impact should look something like that. It's just simply a movement of that right knee in. Address, impact. And if you look at the world's best players now, they have a bit more of the sort of rising of the heels as they come down. They're a lot more dynamic as they come into the shot, but the positions aren't that dissimilar. And that's why I said earlier, in terms of your sequence, trying to get the address position and the backswing built correctly is what creates impact on follow through anyway. I think as well, look at quality of strike. Even on this risky wood here, there are 9 variables really. 1, 2, 3 across the bottom, 1, 2, 3 across the middle, 1, 2, 3 across the top. Now, you've seen me do this before. I never did it the right way around. The roll is, the bulge is going that way. That's the bulge of the club. And the roll of the face is going that way. So the loft of that club is variable. The loft at the bottom of the club is less than the loft in the middle and less than the loft at the top of the club. That club there has an open face there and a closed face there because of the curve on the club face. So the 9 strikes that you can get will give you 3 different results from the bottom and from the middle and from the top. So 9 different results there. And the pros purposely move their strike around the face on a very tight tolerance, of course. Purposely move their strike around the face to deliver the 9 different strikes they're looking for. I know somebody who was there when Tiger Woods was signed by IMG when he first turned professional. And Tiger was showing off and he said, I hit 9 shots. I hit 9 low, so straight low, draw low, fade low, and then hitting 3 medium height, straight medium, fade medium, draw medium, then the same 3 shots high, high fade, high straight, and high draw. Anyway, this guy who was there, he's watched all the best players, used to manage so many of them. He said as he looked at him hitting the shots there, it looked like it was almost like a cube with 9 dots in it. He said, and when he called the shot out, he just went through that little dot. And he says creativity was incredible. What we know that when Tiger does that is he corrupts that club an awful lot at address to achieve the different strikes. So let's say, for argument's sake, I want the ball to fly dead straight. Of course, I put the club there. Any variability I make to the address position and therefore the strike means that ball's going to fly quite differently. For an iron club, it's designed deep over here for a reason. There's tons and tons of space there. Try and get your strikes a little more towards the toe than down here. This is all about impact, really. The closer that golf ball is to the neck of the club, we all hit a few shanks from time to time. And of course, the club is smaller down there. You've got much less area. Now, a golf ball which hits the club there could well catch the shanks. As it goes onto the club face and splats down, the edge of the ball might just catch the neck of the club here and squirt it out to the right of target. So in terms of what we're looking for with your contact, it's very simple with the driver particularly. We're looking for an ascending blow to optimize the spin and the launch angle. We're not looking for descending blow at all. There's very, very few pros who've ever done that. And in one of my books up here somewhere, Arnold Palmer talks about the breakthrough he had when he stopped taking a divot with his driver. He said, I've made a few mistakes. I wasn't swinging as I wanted to swing, and I couldn't seem to take a divot with the driver. When I measured my balls out, they're going much, much further. That's when he stopped taking a divot with the driver. Of course, now we use a big high T-peg, we lean backwards, and we ascend the club to get that ball really launching. Won't take a driver divot there. As ever, quality of contact, left and right, open face, under the ball, over the ball, get rid of those obliques there. That's what impact's all about. So I take the school of philosophy from the Tommy Armour book, really. If we get everything else working properly, the follow-through is either not to be discussed, doesn't need to be discussed, or a general sort of overview of it. So, going through a few myths here now. Never up, never in. That never up, never in phrase comes from when greens were much, much slower than they are now. I would say most amateur golfers are quite ham-fisted when they learn to putt. They end up sort of walloping the ball miles past the target because the greens are so fast. Particularly at Roehampton Club, we're very fortunate. We have very, very fast greens there. And so the speed at which the ball comes off the face is much more rapid. So what I'd be more inclined to do with your putting is look for softer hands, shorter stroke. Hold the club lightly, make your stroke a bit shorter. Long strokes develop too much power, get the ball rolling too fast, or you then sort of corrupt the swing, you have to slow things down just to get the ball to travel a reasonable distance. Next myth, course management. There's no such thing. You cannot simply manage 100 acres of land, but you can manage yourself on the golf course. So your self-management comes down to your expectations. I had a great conversation with someone recently, and I said, how close do you expect to hit the ball? Hey, Lottie, I'm just doing my video. Say hello. Say hello. Go out now, baby. Go out. Thank you. And we went through all the stats of the numbers of how close the pros hit the ball to the green. And I urge you to go onto the PGA Tour website and have a good look at how close or how far away the pros get to the target. So when we look at accuracy from the fairway, if we look at from 150 to 175 yards, the world's best players, let me just get it up. The world's best players, loading data. Wi-Fi is a bit slow this morning. So the world's best players, they average 27 foot and 10 inches from the target. Think of that. That's almost 10 yards away, isn't it? 9 yards away from the target when they hit their approaches from 150 to 175. Pace it out. 9 yards is quite a long way. That's the tour average. The world's best player in 2019 was Danny Willett with 22 foot, 7 yards, or well, almost 7 and a bit yards away from the target. That's the world's best player. From 150 yards to 175. They may well be hit 9 to 8 times from that distance there. So in terms of course management, you've got to understand what your limitations are. If you hit, let's say, an 18 handicapper, you're expected to miss every green, really. Chip on and make 2 putts. If you hit a green, you're doing better than your handicap, and that's where you get this strokes gained thing, which you see on the tour, how they measure people's games and people's elements of their games against what's happening with the rest of the players on the tour. So I would urge you to go onto pgatour.com and then look at the statistics and approaches from various distances, and just run through it and just see how close or how far away the world's best players get to the target from certain distances. You'll be really surprised. They're not hitting the ball as close as you think all the time. Now, when they do miss the green, of course, they're chipping very close. Sometimes they chip in. When they do hit the periphery of the green, oftentimes they get the first putt extremely close or sometimes hold it. So that's how they get their scores much, much lower. But in terms of building your game, finding fairways, finding greens, then the course management element should be transferred into self-management. How do you manage yourself? How do you manage your expectations? What are you truly capable of? And from 200 yards away, you're not expected to hit the green because the pros are hitting the balls about 40 foot from 200 yards away. Now, here we go. Exit left. I love this one. So Gary Player really debunked this when he said, why on earth would you want to exit left when your target is straight? So if my target, for instance, I'm swinging here, I'm trying to hit the ball on that straight line there, exit left is a school of thought. There's a pro swing down, they pull the club across them here to create more power. The thinking being as they come around quickly, they bring the club in this way to create more power. Rather like the ice skater spins around, and the minute they want to go super quick, they pull their arms in here and they spin very quickly because the rotational axis is much narrower, much smaller, much tighter. There's a sort of thinking being, well, when they swing the club down, if they pull the club in and exit left here, they get more power. But of course, the good players don't do that. The good players swing symmetrically around the body. So when I swing the club back, my hands naturally swing around the body this way. Now, we all know that I'm a massive fan of getting the hands much higher. I want the hands to go less behind us than above us, but they still come slightly inside. We don't call that entrance left, do we? We say they swing around the body. As we come down, we want symmetry in the swing. As we come down here, impact. Why would you exit left? You've corrupted the shape of your swing. The easiest way to exit left is to come from across the ball and exit left. It's a phrase I loathe. I've never understood it. And I love it when the old timers chip in on Twitter and all these sorts of social media, because they say, why on earth are you exiting left? Swing the club to the target. And all these fashionable phrases become debunked quite quickly, which I rather like. So in terms of symmetry in the swing, from those points that I'm talking about there, let's go up to McIlroy here. So here he is just before impact. Hands are just in front of his thighs. Through impact, hands are just in front of his thighs. So if we go back 2 frames, he's swinging the club from behind him. Oops, a daisy. Into impact, through impact, and then swings the club behind him. So there is no exit left. I think it's a sort of one of those banal phrases, really. The swing is symmetrical. Around, impact, around. That's the shape of a golf swing. And again, loads of pros, I don't blame them, loads of pros sort of love these sort of technical phrases they developed and make a fortune out of YouTube videos, unlike me. Golf psychology, not a massive fan, if I'm honest. I think a lot of sort of COD psychology got in there, but I must be wrong because some of the world's best players go to the golf psychologists. But they're at the very top of the game, and so they're looking for all the little weaknesses. They've worked out everything within their game, and they get to the very pinnacle there and they say, okay, well, do I need a little tweak to how I'm thinking? And they're very open-minded to that. Not all of them. A lot of them are very skeptical of the golf psychologists, like me. But a lot of them really go in. And Ernie Els, multiple major champion. What do I know compared to him? What I do know from an amateur level, though, is that if you get your technique right and you understand the science and what these sessions are all about, then you become calmer. And as you become calm, you think, well, I understand the science of it now. I don't need sort of golf psychology, so to speak. So if you understand what you're doing, you're less sort of confused anyway, and therefore that can only lead to clearer thinking and clearer golf, really. I'm very opinionated on that, aren't I? But when you read online, people say, oh, the pros are much better athletes now. They're sort of super fit in the gym and what have you. Just look at the physiques of Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Jim Thorpe. These guys, they were big, strong, physical men. And they got to the top of the game for the most part because of that. And so the top players have always been physically strong and unusually physically strong, I would say. Now, there's no doubt about it, the young guys on tour now with the skin-tight shirts are much fitter than the pros of yesteryear. But I would say in terms of natural physical strength, physique, ability, work ethic, I think there's no difference. And the big proof of that is that when they changed the golf ball from the old-timers golf ball, which was a wound ball, lots of elastic bands around a rubber core, that changed in 1997, and the pros The pros used to gain on average a yard every 3 years. They gained 7 yards in 5 years. So the ball made a massive difference, and that ball has kept on going ever since. The longest year recorded on tour for longest hitter on tour was actually 2014. So the pros have sort of peaked now at how far they hit it. It may well be broken this year with Bryson. I think there's every chance of that. But the idea that today's pros are more athletic is true in a sense because they wear tighter shirts, they look fitter, they work out a lot more. But I don't see the pros of yesteryear struggling with the pros of today if they were to jump in a time machine. You look at Langer. Langer's hitting the ball now as far as he did 40 years ago. He's 60 something. Remarkable. Okay, so let me just talk to you now about impact again. I'm going to go back to this. So I've got a balance board here, which I've crudely made this morning. Oops. So as I set myself up with the driver, like this, set up the ball here. I'm behind the ball. You can see my weight on this right side. You don't need to see my head. It's probably easier just to see my legs here. As I swing at the top, my body weight stays, when we look at the one dimension of the swing, which is this one face on here, as I swing up the top here, my body weight hasn't really moved that way at all. I pull my right hip back. Now watch what I do here now. The reason why the pros lift that heel off the ground, this heel here I'm talking about, to get to the top, is when they stamp, that pulls the body weight forwards and then around. So the stamping action here, as I get to the top of my swing, what the world's best players do, is as I stamp down like that, I can't help but bring my club forwards. So in terms of talking about impact and follow through, it's already started at the top of the backswing, hasn't it? Because I've got to the top of the backswing, that left heel's raised, or in your case, in the right heel's raised. The stamping action is what pulls everything back into place. So when we look at the bombers do it, there's Tom Watson at the top of his swing back in the 70s, and he was huge, Tom Watson. Look at that left heel, up off the ground. And it's a stamping action, the return of that club coming down to the ground in the next frame. Oops. Look at that left foot is stamped down now. You can see that there's more flex in both the knees as he puts the pressure downwards. As he puts the pressure down, like I've just shown you on the board, as the pressure's gone down, that pulls the club down. As he pulls himself out of the way, that's what gives him the rotation through the ball. And Tom Watson was huge. Now, in terms of how he changed his swing over the years, and look at the curve on his back there as a man in his 20s. Yeah, very similar arm position to the Sammy Fuller picture and the Annabelle Fuller picture I showed you earlier. But look at him now as a younger man. As an older man, I beg your pardon. Still a hint of the bend in the body, but not an awful lot. And that was something he consciously changed. And into his follow-through, a bit of a blurry picture, but the follow-through there, very elegant, very relaxed. He's done all the hard work prior. In the old days, a lot more stress and pressure on the back there. Okay, so I now want to just read a story to you at the risk of sounding like is there Ronnie Corbett? Nice day for golf. All right, so I love this story. I'm going to wind up with telling you this. This is from one of my favourite books. If you can get a copy of this book, This Game of Golf by Henry Cotton. And it basically talks about his entire life. He was a terrible snob, Henry Cotton, by all accounts. And he spent his life in Monaco in the company of princes and sort of the great and the good, the kings and queens of the world. And he really utilised his life in golf to mix with the people he thought were suitable. He also had a great sense of fun, a tremendous sense of mischief. And I know people who spent time with him as young people. He was very, very giving in that sense. He set up the Golf Foundation, so an incredible man. But I love this book. So, it's my favourite book in golf. So, he talks about an amazing golf occurrence. And he talks about a trick show artist called Joe Ezza. And Joe Ezza was a show-off. He loved showing off to the people, and they played there in the mountains. and at the Italian Open. And Joe Ezza had turned up to the competition, done some exhibition shots, done some exhibition matches, and did his a trick shot routine, doing stuff which amazed all the pros. So uh, Joe Ezza then says to the pros, "How much would you give me if I break the course record?" 1,000 lira, said the president of the club, and it says 66. So Joe Ezza says, "How much for a 65?" 2,000 lira, said the president. And for a 64, said Joe. 4,000 lira, laughingly, said the president. "Right," said Joe, "I'll do a 64. He then took out a cigarette packet from the president's pocket and he did a hole by hole makeup of his 64. So let's shoot 64. He then says, this is Henry Cotton talking now. "I saw very little of the round and I was playing myself, but Joe was left with a 3 at the 9th for a 32 to match exactly what he'd written down. But he announced to the president he must hold his shot to keep his schedule and pitched onto the green and trickled it into the hole. He came back in 32, hole by hole, and he scored exactly what he'd written down on the edge of a cigarette box, and there it was at 64. I wouldn't believe that story if Henry Cotton hadn't told it, but there you go. So, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Any questions that you've got, type them in now. Sorry I'm from the front room today, but like I said, I'm in quarantine for the rest of the day. We've had 2 weeks of it, owing to helping out a neighbour. And then look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday. I'm going to run some online classes through the winter time, but I'll do those at evening time. Give us all a chance to play and get out in the sunshine, and then see us all together next time. So any questions, send me an email, send me a text, whatever. 07974 403 289 is the number, or richard.harrison@roehamptonclub.co.uk. And I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Thanks for tuning in. Can't wait to see you all. Keep yourself healthy, get some fresh air, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon. All the best.